with Chris and, of course, our fearless leader, Shania. She's going to be doing the recording, so anything you say or do will be used as evidence in a court of law. Oh, wait, this isn't a court of law, so we're cool. But just so you know, it is being recorded. Today's meeting is going to focus primarily on veterans and how to engage them in the workforce, where to look, so to speak, for appropriate venues in recruitment, and then touching upon a little bit of trying to discern a military focused resume into the commercial or public format, as well as maybe a few other issues. I don't really like that word, but for lack of another one, that they may be bringing to the workforce, both on the positive and other areas you should consider. So, a little bit of my background. I worked in the federal government. As most of you know, I became a SME regarding recruitment of individuals with disabilities and with veterans, as if veterans are not individuals, but good old government, we like to segregate. So there you have it. Now, in all honesty, anybody on this call, you could virtually throw a stick and probably find 3, 4, or a whole lot more of venues as to where best to recruit veterans. Question is, do you have that knowledge? Are you obtaining information from them? And are you actively engaging not only with the veteran, but if you actually hire somebody that does identify themselves as a veteran? So we're going to put a myth to bed right now. Just because you're living with limb difference or limb loss does not mean, especially limb loss, does not mean that you immediately lost your limb in combat and you are a veteran. I'd like to have a penny for every time someone has told me, thank you for your service. You're so welcome. I have no idea what I did for you, but you're welcome. With that said, and most people, I have to tell you, a lot of people don't believe me. I'm like, okay, fine, just let it roll. So limb loss is more prevalent in the veteran community than limb difference, although it can be considered limb difference if they're a partial hand or a partial foot, instead of a full lower limb or upper limb body part. Where would I suggest you most likely look? If you are working in an actual venue, so you're working in a company and not a company specifically looking to find positions for veterans, a couple of questions that I'll throw out. Do you have what is known as an ERG or employee resource group? And if so, do you have one specifically for veterans? That's segregation. I understand it, although there are at times experiences that veterans have that are not one and the same as, say, the general populace that are amputees or limb loss. And it just gives them a feeling of camaraderie. All right. The other thing is, if you are in a larger company, do you have specific, and I hate to use this word, but let's put our money where our mouth is. Do you have specific hiring goals or quotas in how many veteran-centric events you go to, whether it's face-to-face or through Zoom or something of that nature, or where you advertise your openings? And then if so, do you have a yearly goal of new hires? So when you count how many veterans you are actively working to bring on, it's the new hire, not someone that's worked for the company, hopefully for a very long time. When it comes to educational, so we have UCLA on the line, and other educational, especially higher education. Do not overlook them. They are a very, very strong source in engaging the veteran as they may now be going back to or just starting a collegiate career, because they have to find a different path of career. What they did in the military may not be applicable in the commercial world, or it may not be applicable to them at all. Once you've mapped that out, where you would like to go, I'll give you a few suggestions if you don't have, so where do I start? As I said, colleges and universities, 2-year, 4-year, and trade schools. Very, very high possibility that you will find veterans there. A simple Google search, and Chris will go into it more deeply, will show you a list, a laundry list of events that are only for veterans, and they attract a very large proportion of wounded warriors. And that could be of any area. And then there's your local and your state government. And when I say local, sometimes it's, within a small city, you'll find either an event or you'll find an organization that is specifically geared to help the veteran find a position. Let's talk about resumes a little bit. Even at the collegiate level, you have to put in some sort of application. You can't just walk in the door and say, "Hi, I'm here." You have to have a pathway of how you get into that higher education. And then for an employer, you have to write a resume. Here's I'm not a veteran. We've already established that. However, I am also the wife of a veteran. All right. So many veterans, what they've written is not a resume. Some of them go in right after college, so they go the officer route, and some of them join at 18 and they stay there either 20 or more years, or if they have to, they're medical discharged. They don't understand, and hear me out before you jump to conclusions. They don't understand how to write a resume, because as you go up in rank in the military, obviously there's a plethora of things you have to meet, but you have to write what is called a boarding packet. Here's my description of a boarding packet. We all know what a folder is, right? Those things that you get at conventions or something. And on one side of that packet is a picture of you, so the board knows that they're really speaking to so-and-so, okay? On the other side is everything that you needed to do to meet the next grade up or the next promotable grade, regardless of what it may or not be, and a very nice letter from your CO, your commanding officer, maybe more than one. And honestly, the board has pretty much made their decision if they're going to promote you or not at that point. All the soldier, or I'm using that term to cover all the branches, they've only written, "I did all these things. I'm amazing." But they haven't written a resume, because they don't have to define what they had to do in depth of what they did to get all those things, because it's a known entity in their little circle, so to speak, or in their little bubble. All right. Now they come out into the commercial world and they have to write a resume. My best suggestion is, one, if they hand you a resume that is filled with acronym city, that's wrong no matter what, because acronyms can mean anything, anywhere. And many of them are military centric. And you are not going to have this instant ability to put it up to your head and know what that is. Some of them, no matter what their rank is, had to sign a non-disclosure. They cannot tell you what they did in XY place. And you're going to look them very professionally in the eye, and you're going to say something to this nature: "You need to learn to dance on the head of a pin. Get your tap shoes on." Because they cannot tell you, "I did XYZ in Y country." but they can give you a description that is qualifiable, all right, and quantitative as to what they learned or what they had to know before they did it. And that is a tricky game. There are, for the employer, many, many websites that you can put in some notification of what they said they did in the military, and it will then convert it to what it could be applicable in the the commercial or public sector. It's not an exact match, so be careful. Very, very often write very short sentences because you're just going to magically know it. I've not gotten that magic pill yet, but if you have one, please by all means share it with others. The other suggestion I would say, if you're actually speaking with the person, tell them that they need to write a detailed after action report that they would feel comfortable in giving their commanding officer. And if you do that, their brain is going to say, I got it. Because that's what it really is. That's their concept of a resume, writing out details of what happened in an action. All right, we've got that sort of covered. As we all come into the workplace, my primary disability is I'm a lower limb amputee, but I have others. Some you'll see, some you will not. Not every veteran has PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and other disabilities that have been slapped on that community. But they might. They might be willing to identify as such, and they may not. I will tell you, the more years you spend in the military, the less likely you're going to admit one of those diagnoses. And the reason is if you do and you're actually still in service, that goes on your record and you can just say you're never going anywhere again, promotable. Wrong? Yes, but I don't make the mindset up for that. Be aware of it though. Obviously, you can't say, so do you have PTSD? You can't do that, but be aware that it could happen and it could affect how they perform. I will tell you, I have PTSD and I'm fine and dandy as long as I'm not the passenger in a car because I think I'm going to get hit again. Let me drive, I'm good. So it really is dependent on how it affects them. Sometimes they may allude to or actually ask for the back end office. So they're not in the flow of foot traffic if they're actually in an office site. Or if you notice that it's becoming a distraction for them, work performance is going down, it is something you can discuss in a private conversation. The other tricky thing is traumatic brain injury, which I also have due to that same car accident. My resume, if I was someone else, could read that I have all of these amazing skills and all of these amazing degrees, and I still may be able to perform at that level, or I may not be able to. But they're not lying on their resume when they say they've obtained certain skill sets or certain degrees, because they have. But depending on where the injury may be in their brain, they may not be able to do the same work or do it at the performance level that you would assume. If you see somebody has a master's degree in computer engineering and they're not performing at that level, most employers are going to say, wait a minute, you say you have 15 years experience, you have a master's degree, and you're performing as somebody who, barely knows what to do in computer science. So take those things into the back of your head. I I would love to know if anybody on the line, whether you are the representative of the company or you work within the company, do you have a a quota? Bad word to use, but let's put the money where the mouth is, so to speak. And if so, do you know if your company is actually meeting the guides that they're putting out for themselves? And then the last part, and we can go over these questions after Chris speaks. Um, where are you going to help meet those guides? And if you don't have guides, why not? And would you consider developing them? And if you are considering it, please go small to start with. Don't don't set yourself up for failure. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris. I'm sure he has a wealth of information. Put your questions in the chat if you think you will not recall them, and we can go forward from there. Mr. Chris, you are on.
Thanks. So what's interesting about this topic as we were prepping for the call is even with a good bit of experience in the HR space, this is not a topic that I have a lot of experience dealing with. Just for whatever reason, from a military perspective, it tended to just overlap with all the other kind of employee groups that I dealt with. So as I was thinking about as an employer or someone who's interested in this topic, where do you start? Um, for me, I thought about, when you've got a complex topic like this or a potential topic that has complexity where you're trying to understand what can I do, what should I do, are there lines in the sand that I shouldn't cross, or how do I even know where they are? Who are my partners in this? I just started at the beginning, and so I live in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. I just typed in Veterans Employment Assistance Charlotte, North Carolina in Google, and again, granted, Charlotte is a fairly large city, but you've got city level resources, you've got county level resources, you've got state level resources that pop up immediately, that have all types of services that are typically geared towards the applicant audience more so than the employer audience. But all of those organizations, their goal is to help support veterans find opportunities. So as a prospective employer or someone who supports this space, those are the partners that are a great place to start if you don't have internal assets, just to connect with those organizations. And again, I typed in Charlotte just because for me and my style of trying to understand something, to have potentially a local partner that I can meet face to face, attend meetings, those types of things better allows me to immerse myself in that space and really understand what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, how can I position my employer best when it comes to both attraction as well as retention in the long term for this audience. And there's no shortage of resources when it comes to that type of thing. But I will say again, as someone who comes in really as an outsider to this topic, it can definitely feel a little overwhelming. And that's part of the reason why I like having a local resource. To me, it simplifies things a little bit. You're not trying to navigate the maze of like a national website where it's a little impersonal and you don't have a point of contact if you have questions about something. You can actually build relationships with those local partners. And one of the things that Paula had brought up that I have actually had luck with when we were chatting about this is if you have a base nearby in the area, a lot of times those are phenomenal opportunities to build partnerships. They do have a lot of transitional types of events that you can be a part of, or just get to know that audience better, what they're looking for, that type of a thing. But that really, I mean, just a simple search and using those organizations, even though they're not necessarily marketing themselves to the companies, as a place to start the journey. Reach out, introduce yourself, say, I'm interested in learning more about this community. How do I get involved in this? That's what makes them successful, is having that person on the other end. I'm certain that they have veterans who want to use that service. So to be able to have employers who are also engaging actively is a huge benefit to them. And so my guess is, like many other things, you become kind of a premium customer for them because you're engaging on the other end of this, to be able to take advantage of those services and have great potential talent opportunities for your organization. With that said, I did want to just open it up and just see from the team, are there folks who are seeing success when it comes to this audience from a recruitment retention standpoint? If so, what are you doing? Are there programs that seem to be working for you internally, externally, that are helping drive success?
Nobody is.
We're not working with that audience at the moment, although I know it well through golf. Um, but as far as recruitment, we're having a hard enough time placing the individuals that we have in the workforce. So we haven't reached out to the military. I know PTSD and a lot of other issues. Matter of fact, we have a large percentage of military playing golf, even though they're disabled in some respect. But our biggest challenge, and I don't mean to change the subject, our biggest challenge is placement and getting these corporations who put on their website that they're an inclusive organization. Obviously, DEI is dying, but the inclusion, in my thoughts, is still alive and well. And but I can't seem to break through to these organizations, even though I meet with them face to face. They just don't. They have so many excuses that they're doing this or they're doing that. They don't really need us. But I don't think it's true. Sorry for changing the subject.
No, it's fine. EQ, I mean, changing the subject is part of being an open and, flowing conversation. And the same can go true for someone who's a veteran. All right. Just because you wear the veteran label doesn't mean that people are actually looking at you as a potential employee, or giving you, the fair ability to be hired. One of the hardest things is, just because you have a disability, just because you're a veteran, you have to qualify for the job. I mean, that's just the absolute first criteria. I can't enter UCLA even as an adult, and I have no ability to show or demonstrate I have the capacity to learn what UCLA or any other collegiate organization is going to offer me. That's why they have entrance if you're going in, say, from high school. You just can't walk in, knock on the door, and say, "Here I am." All right. And then that works with the employer as well. Matt, how are you or your organization, and I don't mean to pick on you, so by all means say pass if you don't want to answer the question. What is your organization doing to attract the veteran community?
Sure. No, happy to speak to that. I will say, we are a smaller organization. We have about 600 employees, and we typically have somewhere around 15 open jobs at a time. And so one of the things that I think has been a challenge for us is, despite attending numerous veteran-based job fairs, despite advertising on veteran-friendly websites, we haven't been able to move the needle, so to speak, as far as the interest that we're receiving from applicants that identify as veterans. I see a question, I think it may be directed at me, asking where I'm located. So I work out of New York City, but my organization not only hires in New York City, but also Washington, D.C., Chicago, Houston, and San Francisco. And so we're looking at, we have different team members that do identify and basically are helping us as ambassadors of basically being veterans themselves. Sometimes they will attend the in-person job fairs that we attend or participate in the virtual job fairs and help share their story about how they transitioned essentially into kind of civilian or the regular workforce, so to speak. We are also looking at a program that the Department of Defense has in place. It's called the DoD Skill Bridge program. And so we've done some initial review of the requirements of that program. So on one of my team members' goals this year to see if we can go ahead and submit an application. That program, for those of you that may not be aware, I'll just simply note that it seems like a great program that helps people transitioning out of military life get some experience in the private or the nonprofit sector. And it is seemingly a great program. I'm not into the weeds with it yet, but it does essentially require that the employer create an internship experience and that they would have for every internship that you host, you would have a potential full-time role so that it is a legitimate path to employment. So we're looking at getting involved in that Skill Bridge program is hopefully a means to increase, more tangible programming around engaging veterans. But we aren't seeing a great response from the other efforts yet, so we're open to any other ideas and trying to get out there more because my organization works in international education. Many of our programs relate to international development. There's a lot of public diplomacy. There's a lot of program management. There are a lot of transferable skills that I see one might bring from a military experience to the work that we do. Not only to mention that many of our partners and contracts are with the federal government as well. So we see a number of opportunities to make these connections. I see so many transferable skills, but I'm trying to figure out how we position ourselves as a more attractive employer to this group because we don't have that many opportunities, and so it's a little bit of a smaller scale type of endeavor for us.
So I have a quick follow-up question. You're obviously doing a great amount of outreach right now. I mean, you're using as many resources as possible for a small company. And you are engaging with veterans. Yet you don't seem to be able to find a candidate. Is it that you can't find the candidate that meets the skill set? Or you do, and when you offer a position, the candidate declines?
It's, I guess, a little bit of both. There are, I think the biggest part that we're challenged with right now is that in our funnel of incoming applications, there are very few veterans that we're seeing. So we're not getting a whole lot of interest from that population at the moment. And then when we do, this is a challenge we have sometimes across different populations. Being a nonprofit, our pay rates aren't as competitive as some for-profit or corporate roles. And so, can't blame them if that's not something that they can manage financially, but sometimes we get outbid by larger corporations. But it's
You're
really that
located in
incoming funnel that we're
Matt, you're located in one of your organizations is located in Chicago.
Yes, we have a small office in the Loop of about 20-25 staff there.
And are you hiring for that organization?
Yes, yeah, we have a few kind of entry to mid-level positions that could be based out of Chicago.
And how do I contact with you? Because we have in our database about 250 people with different disabilities, of course, but obviously with skill sets and resumes and if your organization's hiring disabled people, I think maybe we could have a perfect connection with us providing a supply of different candidates for your job openings. And we're in Chicago, so I can meet face to face with them. And I don't know if you have my contact information, but maybe we could work something out if it seems to make sense to you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to explore that. And I think maybe what I can do is if I don't have access to your contact information, I'll reach out to Trinea and ask for that introduction, and then we
Mhm.
can take the call from or the conversation from there.
Fabulous,
That's
fabulous.
excellent. So I'm going to do a quick follow-up, Matt, and then we can go to someone else regarding salary. You're right. All right. I mean, salary is salary, and I don't care if it's nonprofit, profit, federal government, state government, doesn't matter. It is. Here is and you have to really be able to then develop some sort of rapport with the candidate that's a veteran. I wouldn't put it out on your general website, okay? If the veteran is receiving a disability income, so not retirement income, which depending on how many years they've done in the military, they may, in 20 years, you can retire from the military at full retirement.
Mhm.
Obviously, if you went in at 20, you're now 40, you're probably not going to take it, but it is sitting there, right? That's taxable income. So we'll just say the person did 30 and they're 50 years old. They did 30 years. But disability income is not taxable. So depending on the rank that you held, the number of years you served, and the percentage that the VA has graced you with, that calculates into how much money the government is going to come over every month and deposit into your account. Here's my very rough analogy. Let's just pretend it's $1,000 a month. I can almost guarantee it's going to be more, but we'll use that for a round number. That is $12,000 a year versus if it was taxable, it would be about $6,000 a year. So if you use that concept, I mean, you can't say, so what's the government ponying up for you? But you can work it into the conversation that had they really done a financial look, the monies that they are actually going to get and have as workable cash income, does it offset maybe taking a position in a nonprofit? Just food for thought.
I appreciate that.
But they lose. I mean, regular disability is around
No, no,
$1,480 a month, and they are able to work for a certain period of time until they lose that. Would that not be the same in the military?
no, it's not. No.
Okay.
No, I know what you're talking about, EQ, and it's not. Once your disability is, and now that's your disability income. All right.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
other income taxable, just like the rest of us. All right. But no, once the VA sets it, the only way it will differ is if one, let's just say the VA first said you were 70%, then some other diagnoses came in and now you're 100, they'd up the ante and they give a COLA on it, whatever that may be in a specific locale. Okay. But it doesn't go away. So again, it's just, I always like to throw that out when I was talking with veterans. How much money do you really need to live on? Now, you may need all of it. I don't know. I don't know where you live. I don't know what you want your lifestyle to be. but it is something to put in the back of their heads.
Right.
Other, Solomon, I know you are the primary person to do all the hiring at Microsoft. I made that up. But on that note, and I know Microsoft has a large veteran community, so I'm not, pointing fingers at that. But what does Microsoft do, if you know, to really attract the community?
As you said, Paula, I'm not really up on the HR practices. I do know they have, along with our very active military ERG, they have, I believe, special recruiting events.
Okay.
But I, again, am not involved in that. But yeah, with certain groups, they do special recruiting events. And I believe the veterans are one of those.
I can guarantee it. And the only reason I can guarantee it is having come from the federal perspective. Microsoft has many federal contracts, and by virtue of having all of those lovely contracts, they have to they come under 503, which means that they have to demonstrate that they're actively seeking veteran candidates, and there's a whole criteria that they're actively hiring a certain percentage, again, another criteria, and turn those documents into the federal government. So I do know that. But it's something to think about whether you have that contract or not. It's a concept to keep in the back of your head. Who else is looking at or wants to engage more in the veteran community?
I'll
guys.
speak for, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, fine. I wasn't sure.
We'll
You
flip
can
a
go ahead.
coin.
I'll let you go first.
And we're going to do it alphabetically, A before G.
Okay. Well, I'll just say this little piece right here. Ours is a little different, but we do focus on veterans within the organization differently. So all the services that I offer under workforce development is not necessarily geared towards me going out and getting veterans, is because Easter Seals purposely has a veterans whole section department that will
Right.
offer the same services to them. And so they house it together just for veterans. And out of that, we do have veterans that end up coming working for us or working for companies that Easter Seals have, partnered with. And so they kind of do a holistic with employment, mental health, regular health, other services that the families might need. So they have a whole veteran section. And I must say that it always seems to be doing well. And also, just from a personal point of view, my dad is a veteran, and growing up, I remember when he retired, and I saw his transition from the military, and just what you said, I had to laugh because he could not talk about what he did at all. Not at all. So all he would say is, I worked in intelligence, and that was it. And but he went from there to somebody who specifically looked for veterans with their companies, and he ended up retiring a second time with the IRS.
There you go. Yes, by golly, the IRS does hire people. I'm going to make a bad pun, but that's because I work for the agency, so I'm allowed to do it. IRS agents are intelligent, and they hire people in the intelligence field. And no, I was not an agent. I worked in the HR arena, but I couldn't pass it up. Sorry. And in the intelligence field, you truly come home and say, I went to work,
Yeah, period.
or I'll see you in a year.
That too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
Mrs. Gina, what you got for
Yes.
us?
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit. I'm Gina Baxter. I'm out of Greenville, South Carolina. I work for Hanger. And, Paula, like you mentioned, obviously we're a federal contractor, so we have affirmative action plans. And, we, for applicants and employees, we track, the number of veterans that we have or those with disabilities as well. So it's something that we have a large group. Obviously, us being in the orthotic and prosthetic industry, I think we get a lot of just referrals and patients that come to work for us and everybody else. So we do have a fairly large group of veterans and those with disabilities that, work for Hanger. So, and with that, you mentioned ERGs. We have some larger ERG groups and do meetups with those, and then regional support as well. And so, I mean, we do a good bit of recruiting. I know we mentioned Matt, I think it was you that mentioned with SkillBridge. And so we tried to get in with SkillBridge and tried to attend a couple of those meetings to get on board, just because we've seen a lot of folks coming out of the military that, maybe, orthopedic technicians that can come in and be fitters, or they can come in and, work in, as a technician in the back and creating, orthotic devices and helping support those as well. We've just seen a lot of correlation. So we do a lot of just kind of meeting up to what Chris was saying as well, with some of the regional groups where you kind of flip it. They're trying to place people, but at the same time, you kind of reach out to those groups and say, hey, we have opportunities. Can you take a look at our website, or can we talk to you guys or do a presentation, about the opportunities that we have? So it's, instead of just, them trying to help, those trying to enter into the civilian world, it's like, hey, here's a company, they hire all the time, and trying to get those resources and links out to them as well. So we do a good bit. But it is, it's, sometimes it's difficult to, even though they have the programs, I found it a little bit difficult to maybe get in on some of those programs. So, but would like to be in the SkillBridge program. We're just not quite there yet. So
That would be a great connection. I know Hanger's a wonderful, wonderful company, and you're providing prosthetics to those who need them, and then they leave and they're ready to go, and nothing is better than to be able to provide them with an opportunity for employment. And again, if you would like to connect with us, we would love to connect with you, because we have candidates and we also have jobs that we might be able to put the two together.
Yeah, I know. Trinae, you mentioned one time too about maybe getting together and trying to figure out a presentation, or just talk about Hanger, maybe just show people where they can find opportunities on our website. So that might be something that we could, do for the larger group here as well, and maybe invite people in. We are revamping our career page right now. So I don't know if I want to do it until we get that up and going. We're in the middle of a HCM implementation, and if any of you have been a part of that, you will know that it is a heavy load right now. But absolutely think that would be something that we could do, and I think, invite this group if they'd like, or anyone to come to that would be great. So maybe we could talk about that again.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
definitely, for sure, Gina.
Are you in Chicago?
No, I'm not. We have offices in Chicago,
Yes.
but I actually am in South Carolina. But was
Okay.
thinking something from a virtual standpoint, maybe we could do some type of
Well,
meeting or webinar.
we have candidates all around the country, but I'm personally located in Chicago, so, but our other officers are in Ohio and Connecticut, and so we have candidates from around the country. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got, I think on the clinic side we have 920 locations now. So we're all over
Wow.
every state now. I think Vermont was one of the last, but now we're in Vermont. So we have
Go.
so
I got to know your company because we were helping the disabled play golf, And of course, Hanger was a great supporter of our mission. And so I have a great respect for Hanger.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, wonderful. Yeah, I would love to do that. I think happy to pass along my information and hopefully we could plan something for the near future. So,
And
Thank
one
you.
thing, remember that every company, and I stress this, I think almost all the time, every company has almost every job. So as you said, Gina, you're going, and we will send calming tea and sympathy cards. Yeah, we're supportive. You're going through an HR upheaval, so to speak, not in staff, but in developing websites and such. So Hanger, you think of Hanger, if you're in our world, you think of prosthetics and orthotics.
mhm.
But somebody has to run the business as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay? They don't
Yeah.
magically fly off the shelves.
Yeah.
Something always to keep also in that if you're hiring a veteran that is limb loss or limb difference, they may go to Hanger.
Mhm.
That would be what is referred to as a remote, because primarily they should come into my neighborhood, which is, I live in Virginia, but not far from Walter Reed. That's
Mhm.
the primary base. But let's face it, if you're in Wyoming, you're not going to fly to Walter Reed to have, a minor adjustment or even get a complete new socket. That's insane. So they go out remotely, such as with your company. Another thing to think of is, again, this is in the back of your head. If you're offering a position, depending on the veteran, all right, and the status that they've left the military with, they may have what is called TRICARE for life, which means they have health insurance for themselves and their family for life at no cost. So if you're offering benefits, we all know in the labor market, when you're thinking I'm hiring somebody, I'm going to pay them X dollars, but then you figure in the cost of their health insurance and sick time they earn or whatever other benefits that have a monetary attachment to them. I wouldn't wave it in their face, but it's from the employer side, it's a negotiable that you might want to keep in the back of your head.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a good point. And I think, Paula, you said it too, sometimes it's not just those that come into our offices or clinics, and there's other Hanger clinic side. We've got, other companies within the Hanger Inc. company, and we have a lot of positions that are, location specific, maybe in one of our offices, but we also have a lot of remote and hybrid roles out there now too, to support those that maybe can't come into an office. So that's definitely something to consider as well.
Right. Somebody is running that website.
Right now it's me. But
but somebody's writing the code
right,
to write
right.
whatever shows up on the magic screen. So yeah, you might have a Hanger shirt, and you have no idea how to make a prosthetic any more than, my cat.
Right.
So, it's just something to think about. Solomon did put in the chat a link for the Microsoft Veterans information. Feel free to, share it with anybody that that is seeking a job, or you just want some solid information. Last comment, so to speak, is, let me use the analogy my husband used. So my husband did 28 years in the military. He has all his limbs. That was the rule. You go away, that's fine. But, I've already gotten that disability, pick your own. I mean, fair is fair. All right. Plus he's taller than I am, and I would look really weird in a 5'2" and a almost 6-foot prosthetic, a little off balance there. The military, if you've done enough years, is like, and this is his quote, is like a bad drug. Once it gets into your body, that is the way you function. And so some veterans do have a difficulty transitioning into the civilian life or civilian workforce, I don't care what your company does or doesn't do, because you don't say, yes, sir, no, ma'am. You don't show up at X time. You use 8 o'clock in the morning instead of 08. And those are just itty bitty nuances. Anya, have a really strong feeling that your dad would tell you it's at 1300. And you knew darn well that was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay. So there's just nuances. Occasionally, I have to tell you, my husband's in the civilian world. He works for DOD, of course. All right. Since '09. And he still comes home occasionally and says, I can't believe the civilians did X. And I very politely say to him, and what was the duty uniform of the day? Did you notice you're a civilian? Okay, so it's just certain mindset, and you could take that to almost any culture, to be really honest. But I happen to know that it is pretty prevalent in the veteran culture. Other questions, comments, thoughts? You never would hire a veteran in your life. Don't say that if it's true. I've heard it, and we've all heard, I don't want to hire somebody with a disability.
I was gonna mention, and I put in the chat, this is Julia. But so I'm with the National Youth Employment Coalition, and so obviously we don't do direct hiring for young people, but we work with a ton of organizations, throughout the country. So of course, I'm sure a lot of them, our member organizations, probably do possibly have specific work related to hiring for veterans. But my question would be, and I kind of alluded to this, is like we specifically focus on that 16 to 24 population for Opportunity Youth, now like 14 to 26, depending on, what the standards are. But and not every organization in the member only or sorry, in the coalition like only works with Opportunity Youth. Some work with youth and have a separate, adult sphere. So I definitely think there's like tons of folks that probably have like overlapping programs that would kind of meet this criteria. But what is the percentage of young people that like start in the military at 18 and get out after that 4-year commitment? Because I know that's like also a kind of a route, or especially from like an educational standpoint, folks will go in, I think it's you give 4 years, you get 4 years of education. So I was just wondering, like maybe that I definitely know that as NYEC, we haven't tapped into this. I'm sure our member organizations have, but just thinking like, okay, yeah, on the higher end of who we serve, that 22 to 26, maybe there are some folks who are veterans that are still so much younger. And a lot of, what I think when you hear the term veteran, you're thinking of a little bit older, which is maybe a misconception. So I was just, wanted to ask some questions around that. And maybe that, we're just totally blind and missing the mark here by, not tapping into focusing on veterans.
That's a really, really good question. And I do not know the statistical number, but I'll look it up or try to get at least a fairly sound response
Yeah.
for you. Believe it or not, I'm going to make an educated guess. All right. That population might be larger than you think it is.
Yeah.
One, you're right. There are people that go in at 18, they do the 4 and they're done. All right. I mean, they hit year 3.5 and they've got their bags packed already.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's also a group that may be injured in that age range. Please keep in mind, most people think if you are a veteran and you are someone with limb loss, it happened in a combat zone. More than likely, yes. It also can happen because you're in the 82nd Airborne and you did a jump and it didn't work out quite the way it was supposed to. It can be that you were on base riding your motorcycle.
That's a really
an
good point.
accident occurred. They are still military career related. and they get the same overall benefit as somebody that did 25. Okay, so it
Yeah.
does not always mean it's the older veteran that you're going to meet in a disability category. It could be much, much younger. Not that I would impose that on anybody, but it does. And believe it or not, there is a fair percentage of people that do go into the 82nd. 82nd Airborne is one of the, they're actually not far from Gina and Chris. They're in the newly named base, Fort Liberty. Would you just leave it as Fort Bragg? I've decided that all the bases should just have numbers instead of renaming everything.
Mm.
But 82nd is out of Fort Liberty, and that's what they primarily do. They're jumpers. Obviously, they have other, positions there, but a lot of people do a jump, and if you don't land correctly, yeah, you could eventually be in my category, so to speak. But I will get that information. Tanea will hit me with something and remind me to look it up. All right. But yeah. And Matt, if you are out of Washington, D.C., not you maybe specifically, and you want to meet me or you want to have a deeper dive with me, I live in about 7.5 miles from Washington, D.C. You may say, "Oh, I'm so sorry," anytime you would like to.
I actually go to DC a few times a year, and I enjoy the DC area, so I won't say that.
Yeah, a
but
few
thanks for
times
the
a year,
invite.
I probably enjoy it as well. It's just very busy. It's a very congested, heavily populated area, even on my side of the Potomac. So that's why I say that. I have nothing against people that live in DC. Other questions, thoughts, comments, help on any topic at this point? Wow. All right, then. I'm going to let Shania wrap up this game. Thank you for playing Veteran Hiring Bingo. We appreciate it. And Solomon is going to drop. I don't know if he's going to drop off the call or just, fall off. Go for it, Miss Shania. What you got for us?
Thank you, Paula and Chris and council members for joining us this afternoon. So any additional questions that you have around veteran hiring and recruitment, just reach out to me or Paula or Chris. We'll be more than happy to provide support. Gina, I will be in contact soon for us maybe to set up like a meeting to talk about a webinar specifically in 2025. As we kind of plan out and outline our workforce development webinars for next year. So I'll be in touch more than likely after the holiday. I know we're coming up to the holidays pretty quickly, which is hard to believe. But I will definitely be in touch for sure. But yeah, thank you all for joining this afternoon. I look forward to seeing you guys next month on our final Employment Council meeting for 2024. As always, if you have any ideas for topics that you want to know more about, send them our way to me, Paula, or Chris. I think next month's meeting is going to be geared more towards planning for 2025 as an employment council. So we'll talk about what that programming and outline looks like specifically for 2025. But any other topics you want to learn more about and want more information on, just feel free to send us an email. But other than
we also have 2 webinars in December. The
We also
11th and the 12th.
webinars,
I'm doing the one on the 12th, which is federal resumes. So if you want to join yourselves or you have candidates, employees, whatever it may be, Trinae will send out the information. We'd love to see you on the webinars.
Absolutely. And then we have another webinar on how to start your own business and entrepreneurship with one of our certified lead advocates. His name is Bill. So that one is going to be on the 11th. And then Paula's is going to be on the 12th of December. So our communications team just posted that information and the registration link for those on our website. So I will make sure to send those out by the end of the week along with our recap video meeting recording. So you guys have those. So yeah, if you're free, definitely join one or two or both of those. And if you have any participants that you're working with as well that could benefit from one of those webinars, definitely feel free to share that link also.
I have one question. I'm sorry. We don't have any